coming to you live from Steve's studio located at Beach City Funland with Gems and Steven. It's Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gamed. I'm your host with your most, your DM Jared. And tonight I'm joined by Tina.
Hello.
And Steve.
Yo.
So what are we doing here tonight? Since you're listening, it's a Ramblings. Ramblings is awesome. So, yay!
Woot.
What are we rambling about? Well, if you didn't know, we are talking about the witch class that Tina got to do the play test on. You could go back and listen to our play test. That was pretty awesome, run by Steve. And they finally released it in the APG, the Advanced Player's Guide. So the witch. Tina, you're going to walk us through this. This is going to be you. It's going to be a lot of me and Steve just hopping in, but you're taking the reins on this one. So why don't you take us through it?
I really enjoyed this, especially being able to do the play test and then seeing how they adapted it is really interesting. I love the witch, just the fact that it's another spellcaster that has intelligence as your key stat. Because if the core rulebook, you really only, if you want to be an intelligence-based spellcaster, the wizard is really your only option. Like if you're doing wisdom, you get the cleric or the druid. If you're doing charisma, you get the bard, the sorcerer, and then the wizard's the only. So I like that it's an intelligence-based caster, but with the witch, you can have like a different flavor to it. They did make a couple of changes from the playlist. The biggest one, and it's kind of the one that I had the biggest concern over. During the playtest, because you get, as a witch, you get a familiar, and your familiar is like your spell book. With the playtest, if your familiar died, you got a huge penalty to your spells. With the playtest, I think if your familiar died, instead of your familiar knowing 10 spells and 5 first level spells, they only knew 3 cantrips. It was 10 cantrips and 5 first level spells. Instead, it got knocked down to 3 cantrips and 1 spell per level. And you had to wait a week to get all those back. So you kind of in combat situations, you kind of needed to protect your familiar more than anything else. So it was kind of like you don't utilize your familiar, and then why bother having one? So now they've gotten rid of that, which is great. And the penalty, if your familiar dies, it's more of an RP thing. So when your familiar dies, it can come back as it was, or it can get reincarnated as something else, but still be your familiar, or you can just get a brand new familiar. So it doesn't really interrupt your spells or what they know. They still know the same spells from when your last familiar died. But it's up to DM discretion. You could just especially if it's a long-term campaign and you have a good relationship with your familiar dies, you could get a brand new familiar and have to start all over with that relationship building. So it's still some kind of a penalty, but you're not if you have a week time period where you're going to be fighting a boss, you don't have to be I only have 5 spells as opposed to the full. You're not completely hampered and useless. So that was interesting.
On the topic of familiar, I did notice. I don't know if every class, because I was messing around on if you're out there playing 2nd edition and you have a Android, you probably have heard of Path Builder, and I know our group uses that a lot. So they updated it to have the new classes, and so I made a witch. I was like, I'm gonna make a witch. And I noticed, I don't know if every witch gets it, but they had a familiar thing where you could phase your familiar out of existence.
Yes.
As a reaction. So is that something you could do while combat's happening? The evil sorcerer cast fireball on my familiar to, I don't know, be a jerk. You could be reaction, just nope, my familiar is no longer part of this existence. Is that something?
It says you can cast as a reaction.
So
it is a reaction.
So you could totally just boop your familiar out of existence.
Which is nice because you can actually utilize your familiar. I mean, it's still a familiar, not an animal companion, so you're still limited what you can do from that respect. But you can actually do something with them instead of being we're gonna hide you while I go find You can actually focus on what's in front of you, and exploration mode. You can do a little bit more there too. So it was just it was such a big distraction with the playtest of this is my spell book. This is like what I base my class on, and it's so fragile. So it's nice that there's a little bit more protection for it.
Yeah, I remember you had the cat
that I never used.
That you well, yeah, because you were terrified it was gonna die.
It was like in a sling bag on my back, and that was it.
Because you were scared. You were like, "Hey, man, if this dies, that's it. Like, I'm officially super useless."
I mean, one spell per level, regardless of how many spell slots you have. I mean, that's a huge, and that's based off of the spells that you chose last time your familiar went down. And you have to wait a week, not even like a day, a week before you can get all of your other spells back. So it depends what's going on in that week.
Yeah, downtime.
That could be a really shitty week.
Yeah, if the Orcus decided to consume the world tomorrow, well, looks like you're SOL.
If you're on your way, like with our current campaign, we're going to Noalia. If my familiar dies the day before we go to Noalia,
guys, we gotta stop. We're just gonna go back.
Wait a week.
We're gonna put the apocalypse on hold. We need a week of downtime.
Just for a week.
Yep.
But they did keep in a lot of the fun things that, like, you know, if you meet another witch who has a familiar, the familiars can kind of learn spells from each other and all of that, you know. There's certain like feats as you go, you can have feats for your familiar. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of choose to like upgrade yourself or upgrade your familiar to do more and have more abilities. So it's a fun option to have.
I thought the learning spells from another familiar was going to be slightly more grotesque than it was in the book, because they talk about how you learn new spells, because in essence it's a familiar, but it's acting like a wizard spell book. So you can add spells. It's not just limited to the spells you get when you level. You can add more witch spells to your familiar.
And your familiar can learn spells by eating scrolls as well.
No.
Yes.
So you can write a spell on a scroll, but then your familiar has to eat it, and that's another way to teach your familiar a spell. You're still limited with like 10 cantrips and whatever, but like you can choose. Yeah. What? So you can't verbally teach your familiar something. You have to write it down on a scroll and then feed the scroll.
They made special rules for witches, so you can actually scribe a scroll for the sole purpose of feeding it to your familiar, and you don't have to take the scribe scroll. You don't have to take the arcane crafting feat. So, but only for the purposes of feeding it to your familiar. If you want to actually make a scroll, then you'd have to take the feat as normal.
And like I can't, like if there's another witch with a familiar, I can't use a spell that the other witch's familiar has. It has to be something that my familiar has. So they can either learn from each other, or it can. I just thought like the concept of it having to physically ingest a scroll.
I thought like learning spells from another familiar meant they had to eat the other familiar, because that's why I thought they were going with it. But apparently they just talk to each other.
Yeah, they just chat.
No, they do what dogs do. They sniff each other's butts, and
so they kind of made the familiar from just kind of being a living incarnation of your spellbook to actually having more to them, which is nice. And
they're actually slightly more powerful familiars, actually, because I think that they made the familiar more of an ingrained part of the witch. And as a wizard, you don't have to have a familiar. Yeah. Witch, you get the familiar, so it's an ingrained part. So they're slightly more powerful.
It's your bond with your patron. Like you learn your spells from your familiar, not necessarily directly from your patron. Your familiar is kind of your link to your patron. And I kind of like some of this feels a little similar to like Warlock from D&D, where like you don't know who your patron is. You could depending on how you want to play this, you can have an idea, or you can go in completely blind and have your DM just make the whole thing up and know nothing about it. So there's a lot of opportunities to just like have fun with it. Like you can pick a theme. The witches get themes that you can choose from along with lessons, and depending on which theme you pick, that's kind of where your spells come from.
Okay.
So they have Fate, Curse, and Night are your occult themes. Fervor is Divine, Rune is Arcana, and then you have Wild and Winter for nature. So depending on what kind of flavor you want your witch to have, you can pick a different theme, which is kind of nice. So you can kind of like within the same class, you can go in a whole bunch of different directions with this. You can have like a whole like coven of witches in your party, and they can all choose a different theme and all be completely different characters, which is a lot of fun.
I think that's cool. I always enjoyed when you can have like a full party of a single class and then be completely different, which is something I really liked about Pathfinder first edition, but second edition really like drives that home. You could be all clerics, or now you could be all witches, and no one would be exactly the same.
I feel that's a common thread with all Pathfinder second edition classes for the most part.
Yeah,
I feel like that would be really funny to have like either one or two witches and be like, no, my patron's stronger. Look what I can do. No, my patron's stronger. Look what I can do. Like when you have
no one
little
knows
kids,
who the fuck their patrons are to begin with, but
same patron, just messing with them.
Yep.
The whole time.
Because it's nice because when you're building your character, and then something else that they changed a bit from the playtest is one of the skills that you got used to be dependent on what lesson you picked, and now they have it. It's based off of what patron theme, which makes a little bit more sense. Because there's like different levels here. You get like your theme, and then you also have lessons that you learn depending on which feats you take. So you can just like, you don't have to specialize in one area. You can kind of be a little bit of this and a little bit of that as you go, which is fun.
It seems that lessons are an optional thing.
Yeah.
Because for the lessons, you have to take a feat for it. For the patron basis, the patron theme is innate in first level.
Yeah, so at the playtest, you had to, your skill, your like free skill that you got was based off of your lesson. Now they make it based off of your theme, which makes a bit more sense in that regard. They also give you an extra skill. In the playtest, you got like your int mod +2, and now you get your int mod +3. So you get a little bit extra.
Plus, you're focusing intelligence for the most part anyway with this anyway.
Yeah, so that's nice. And I just love all the options that they have. But yeah, we were kind of talking about this before we went live, that they changed Cackle around a little bit. It used to be just a free feat that you got. Now they made it a first level feat that you have to choose. But it's got some fun stuff going on with it. So I like it.
So what are some of the things you would enjoy playing or see like a hard difference between the playtest and this class currently? Like what was what was something you hated in the playtest, and then now like did they change that, or was it like nope, they still loved it?
The familiar thing was one of my biggest like criticisms, because if you're just gonna like have your spell book and not do anything with it, then you might as well be a wizard. So I do like that they kind of fix that, but the fact that you can kind of like, the witch is kind of an amalgamation of different classes. Like now that they've changed all this with your familiar, and that you can enhance your familiar, you kind of have a companion relationship a little bit similar to the ranger, and that you can kind of like, there's a second level feat where you can talk, like you speak with your familiar. Like you don't have to cast anything, you just understand them all the time and can talk to them. And then any other like animals that are similar to your familiar, you can kind of understand them too. So you can like really lean into that if you wanted, or just some of the counter spells, the way those build. Because I think the counter spell is a first level feat that you can choose, and it's a little restricting in that it has to be something that you have prepared. But there's a feat you can take later on where you can actually like bounce it back, which is cool. So I like how some of these feats build on each other like that.
How was the spell in the playtest? How was the spell list? Was there a specific spell list that only like here's your witch spell list? Or
it kind of functions similar to the themes in that you got the spell list depending on what theme you were going with.
So now it's a little different where you get either occult or Arcana, Divine, or Primal. You get an entire spell list from the core
depending on what you're doing. And then it depends too on because I think they changed it in that your free skill comes from your theme and not from the lessons. But you can also, some lessons, like you can mix a primal lesson with an occult theme. So you can kind of mix them around that way. Yeah, you don't have to, like, the lessons that you get aren't restricted by what theme you pick.
Okay.
So you can pick the curse theme, which is an occult spell list. And then you can pick Lesson of the Elements, and you can get an elemental betrayal hex. and your familiar can learn Burning Hands and Air Bubble and Hydraulic Push or Pummeling Rubble. So you can mix up between your hexes that you get from your lessons and your themes. You can sort of play in more than one spell list. It's just kind of what you want your core spell list to be. And then there's a basic lesson, there's a greater lesson, and there's a major lesson. So if you choose those feats as you go, you can even mix those up. You can pick a basic lesson that has, primal spells, and then you can pick something later that has arcana. So there's no you're locked into one thing. You can kind of play around between the different schools of magic, which I think is really fun.
I like that concept where you could just kind of mix and match, which again goes back into the whole thing of oh well, get ready for more choices, right?
Yeah.
Just more choices. So why don't we look at the lessons, right? So you have this concept of you now need to take, you don't get it right away, right? As a lesson, you have to take it.
The lessons are, hang on.
At level 2, you get basic lessons, right?
2 is your basic, at level 6 is your greater, and then at level 10 is your major.
Okay, so with the lessons, I can choose, let's say for basic lesson, right? I could choose lessons of the element, right? So I get all that stuff. And then my greater, I could go snow. Is that they don't
you
say
can.
I could just jump like that?
Yeah, so you can go snow, or you don't, I don't even think, let me see, do you have to pick? Yeah, if you, even at that second level, if you want to pick something else and not do a basic lesson, you can still get a greater lesson. Those aren't prerequisites for the later ones. So you can kind of pick and choose as you go which ones you want. But yeah, you don't have to, you're not married into any particular school. You can just kind of do whatever you want, which is great that you can kind of depending on where your campaign takes you or what your one shot is, you can do a little bit of everything if you want.
Got it. And hexes are your focus spells, similar to you're playing Druid now. So you would have focus spells okay, so they follow that same format with most of the casters, right? Like clerics and druids and wizards and stuff. You get your focus spell, and you just have it flavored, right? So this one called Hex. So did you look at any hexes? Not hexes, sorry. The specific feats. I know in the first edition there was cackle and stuff like that. Did they change that a little bit in this one where they're independent feats? I can see that. So your patron doesn't give that to you anymore. So now you can be a witch without cackle, which
you could technically. You don't have to pick it. That was the big thing. It's now that you have to choose cackle, you're kind of giving something else up. At least in the beginning. I mean, as you level up, you can always go back and dip into the lower level feats. But now you are really deciding what you want to do, because that counter spell is really fun. Reach spell is always, that's not a witch specific one.
Yeah.
The cauldron is interesting too, because that's another avenue that you can take your witch down, is just to lean very heavy into your crafting and making potions, which is a little bit of the alchemist flavor in it. So it's you get a whole bunch of different classes influenced in this one, which is fun.
I like that. I like the cauldron. I don't know if we know, but Caldy is kind of like the original witch cauldron that Trevor hasn't used, but he had that ability for a very long period of time. But I like cauldron because I don't know, it just in my head you got your double doorable toil and trouble old school witch from Macbeth just around the cauldron crafting. But now that you don't need a week to wait for your familiar to come back, I feel now you're well, I'm now taking more downtime to do that. I mean, it's but you're just making potions. So I mean, you could always dip alchemist, right? So you could go witch alchemist and just be hard potion maker. Fortitude would have been cool. See a hard spellcaster with a high fortitude save. That would be interesting.
Well, wait for Magus. Wait for Magus.
No.
Depending on how you Yeah, depending on how you build your witch, you could just be kind of a melee fighter because you get the hair, you get the nails, you get all these like cool like melee attacks. So yeah, you can do a little bit of everything.
So wait, tell me about the hair and the nails, Tina.
Okay, so there's living
am I
hair.
Gonna be beautiful?
You can be if you want.
I want to be the prettiest princess over here.
So there's, which one do you get first? I think it's the hair first.
The hair?
Yeah. Okay. So second level feat is living hair, which you can grow and shrink your hair, and that extends to all hair, eyebrows, beard, your mustache by several feet, and use it as a weapon.
What?
So if you want to be a witch with some melee abilities, you can.
Wow, I'm looking at that. So it's a D4, not terrible, not amazing, but it's agile. Yeah,
it's a brawling.
It's brawling, yeah, but it's agile, disarm, trip, and finesse. That's amazing. Like you could trip someone and disarm people with your hair. That's actually pretty dope.
And then fourth level is the nails.
The eldritch
that you get really sharp nails, and that's a D6 slashing. And that's also brawling and agile. And you can etch your nails with runes, so you can get your nails done and like have even more fun stuff going on. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
So I can etch. I could put like striking on my nails.
Oh, wait a minute, that's cool.
Right? Like.
Oh yeah, you could do that. But I was just reading some of the other things you get with the nails, and it's kind of ridiculous.
Right.
Making a witch magus.
And then you can deliver hexes through your nails. Like it's a whole.
Real? Yeah. Oh wow, that is a whole. So you have
for like, fourth level feat. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's really good actually. So yeah, I'm just.
You can roll in an attack when you cast a spell when you cast a hex with it.
No way, really?
Yeah. So when you successfully cast a non-cantrip hex that requires 2 actions or more to cast, and that doesn't require a spell attack roll, if you're within range, you strike along with the spell. Oh, but if you miss, the spell fails.
All right, that's not so bad.
Yeah,
you gotta have side effects too.
That's true. That's Magus Witch right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can just do up your physical appearance and be a badass melee witch who also casts spells.
In my head, I want to play like this 1940s homemaker with the beehive hair and like the long clacky nails, and just be all of that.
It's like trolls.
Yeah, like trolls. Yeah, just with the beehive hair, and then like my familiar is obviously a giant bee that hides
that just
in my
lives in
beehive.
your hair.
Yeah,
I like it.
I got the beehive already.
I like it.
I'm all about that. See, I got this whole character built now. Now I need to play a witch.
You're good. You're good.
I wonder if your familiar has to be a living thing.
I think they say it.
I think it follows the regular rules of familiars.
I mean, obviously we give it hit points and whatever, but I wonder if you can like, because one of them is one of the themes is rune. Right? Your patron is one of symbols, and I literally want the Necronomicon floating next to me and just attacking people.
No, Miss Frizzle is totally a witch. That's right.
Miss Frizzle's a witch. We just figured it out.
I love it.
Miss Frizzle's Damascus. You're right.
It makes sense.
It checks. It checks out.
It makes so much sense.
It just checks.
Witch's Charge is also a fun feat.
Witch's Charge? Which one's that?
You're basically, it's a 6th level feat. You basically create a link with another person.
Okay. And
you kind of like, you always know where they are. It's kind of like the status spell that I have as a druid.
Got it.
Except this is on somebody. And then I think there's another feat you can take later on where you can do that to a group of people.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you always know where like it could be like someone that you're fighting against who might be running away from you or whatever, but like you can build on that and be like, I know where you are all the time.
There's a lot of familiar feats too. Like usually like there's like
one
regular familiar and then improved familiar. And like there's improved familiar, enhanced familiar, incredible familiar.
They built up so you have a lot of options to build this. So many, like you can lay into your familiar, you can lay into your physical appearance, you can lay into your potion creation,
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot here that you could play with, and I like that. And I mean, like, obviously they left a lot open, right? So your patron themes, you have your spots for Infernal and Abyssal can jump in there whenever they release that. Because right now you have Fate, Fervor, Night, Rune, Wild, Winter, and Curse, right? So we all know why Winter's here because of Baba Yaga, but like I see like a lot of space here that they can like kind of stretch out this class.
Oh yeah,
Not
there's
to
room
say
to
they
grow.
can't. Yeah, not to say they can't do it with other ones. I like Witch, and this is just me. I like Witch because every other caster, excluding obviously not counting Alchemist, because some people argue it's a caster, but it's really not. I mean,
It's kind of like a half caster.
Yeah, but
You're making things and you're a crafter.
Yeah, you're more of like a crafter class than you are like a caster. But like, I feel like a lot of caster classes either are just damage, right? So you have sorcerer, which is just damage. Wizard's kind of like the Swiss Army knife, but if you don't prep your spell, you're kind of SOL. So if you forgot to prep, fly, everyone's kind of got to wait to, fly.
You never forget to cast fly.
Well, but like, oh man, like we're in the jungles and I needed to take freedom of movement. I needed this. And it just so happens you're at a chasm. You're like, guys, I forgot fly. Let's take a nap and tomorrow I got this.
But it's 9 in the morning.
Yeah, no, naps for days.
It's like your bard not having like haste or
exactly. It's like, but like bard is again a very interesting caster because it falls into this. You either are a helpful bard or a helpful bard. You can't be a negative bard, and I feel like the witch is that debuff class, and I like playing debuff classes. I love playing a class where I can hinder my opponents because what's the rule? If there are no enemies, no one needs healing, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of, if everyone's dead, there's no need for worries, right? And I really like Witch. I like how Witch has a lot of stuff that makes them interesting and makes them efficient. Obviously, Tina, you're the only one who got to play. So here's my question. Did they have the patron themes? Because I remember in the playtest they only released
hang on, let me see. I have both up right now.
They only released a very small amount. I know at like Oracle, they only had like 3 mysteries.
When they had it, they have it set in the playtest. They have it where the lessons are like your primary. Like they don't even get into
the
I don't even think they did themes.
No, they didn't. Okay.
So the lesson was you're based on your patron.
Yeah.
So that was you picking your patron.
Yeah. Okay. So they did mix it up.
Yeah, they didn't do themes. It was just your lesson, and that was it. So they kind of split it up a little bit.
I like that. I think that works out really well, especially the fact that your patron theme, like I remember in the playtest, you got hindered because you were worried about your familiar. You were worried about keeping your familiar alive and on you. That was like another big problem.
We were fighting something that couldn't be reasoned with. It was also bad spell. It was also bad spell selection on my part. We'll put responsibility where it belongs. It was also user error. Yeah,
but also like I felt like a lot of the witch spells that they had originally were very mental effects. It was all
that was from the Oracle. That was from the occultist. Yeah. One of the hexes, I forget which hex. There was a hex that I have to listen to the episode again, but there was a hex that I used that was like really like effective, but it's a one shot. But it's nice. It does have like any other class that has like focus spells. They do have feats where you can, if you've used 2 focus points, when you rest, you get 2 back instead of 1. So they do give you the same kind of opportunities with the other spellcasters that, if you want to be able to expand your focus points or get more back more quickly, that you have the options for that too. But again, that's a feat that you would have to take instead of taking something that's specific to the witch. So it's.
So this is gonna sound crazy, but
go for it.
Would a witch barbarian be a class combo? Because I'm looking at this, right? So you could take Moment of Clarity.
It depends on your ancestry, but yeah, you could do it.
Yeah. And then you got your hair and your claws. So you could be very like, you know, feral with that. Oh man, you could totally play like a crazy barbarian witch hybrid. That'd be interesting. I think a lot of classes
it would be okay.
Yeah.
The agile hurts.
Yeah.
For barbarian. That's another thing.
Well, that's why you got your claws. You got your nails.
No, I'm saying is that the fact that they're agile hinders the barbarian's damage.
Makes everything sad. You gain.
The interesting thing I liked was when looking at the lessons, and this is if you're taking the optional lesson, I've noticed that a lot of things about the witch when it comes to the feats that you can take, they usually like, if they give you a focus spell, they usually give you a focus spell and then a little extra. And for the most part, I mean, there are things that you just give up, but like all the lessons of you gain a hex, depending on which one you pick, and your familiar gets something.
Yeah, anytime you learn something, your familiar also learns something. So you're kind of like a team in that regard.
You're like, here, if you take the lesson of vengeance, which is the basic lesson, you gain the Needle of Vengeance hex, and your familiar gains Phantom Pain.
Phantom Pain.
You know, just like anytime that you get something, they get something, which I think is interesting, where this is more akin to like almost like a ranger and their animal companion, but you have to take the animal companion. And things that you take affect the animal companion. That's the thing.
And it's not actually an animal.
Well, yeah, but it's very similar to where as a ranger you can make that animal companion really powerful. And in this, I feel that familiar is like, this is more like a combat familiar, like go, murder, kill. You send your familiar out to this is like a little like floating thing that's going. That's like, oh, it's so cute, and then it just his mouth, its jaw unhinges and it starts eating people.
That's the funny thing is, it's your familiar is still a tiny object, but it can do all of these things. I love it. I love tiny little things that can do like crazy damage.
Yeah. This is obviously has nothing to do with the actual class, but I love how they reworked the witch, the artwork, and they have her familiar be the nine-tailed fox.
It's nine-tails. It's totally.
And I think that leans into this whole area of like, use your imagination and get crazy with your familiar, right? Because
your
like
familiar can be whatever you want.
And I like that. I like that because then it forces you, not forces you, but it axes the player to be interesting and to make this character more theirs. And I like that a lot because, like, no offense with the ranger animal companion or the druid animal companion, but like familiars are cool, and I think like it's so cool when you could be like, oh, my familiar is an eye with 8 legs, and you're like, what? Don't put that near me. You're like, nope, that's my familiar. And you know, you could just, why isn't an eye with 8 legs, and be like, I don't know, my patron's a voyeur. I don't know, guys. It just showed up one day, and you weren't freaked out. Nah, I scream every time I wake up. But that's something cool. Or you could do like, oh, my familiar is just a jellyfish with, you know, little rainbow wings. And I think that'd be fun. And I like that. I like that they kind of emphasize on like this new familiar, because originally in first edition it was a fox, like it was legitimately just a fox, and now you have this 9-tailed fox, and it's spiritual, right? That leads a lot into the concept of like, this is otherworldly. You're not dealing with a normal situation. Also, the witch, the actual witch, she looks dope. She looks terrifying and dope all at the same time, which I guess is what you're going for. So cackle is, you learn the cackle hack. Sorry, I'm just reading over the stuff, and
that's okay. We're gonna bounce around.
I'm coming. Sorry, from like, I'm from first edition, right? The first edition, which Cackle was kind of their bread and butter, and you now have this Cackle. You learned the Cackle Hex, but on top of that, it increases your focus points by 1, which is nice, right? Because you can jump that up. But
that gives you already 2.
That now you're already at 2, right? So
you start with 1.
Because you start with 1, and you don't have to use your focus points for what they say.
As you get more hexes, you can apply them however you.
So you already get. I'm pretty sure you already get a focus spell based on your theme. You get a focus spell by innately that defensive familiar one.
Yep.
Every witch gets that, and then Cackle. If you take Cackle or you take any of the lessons, you're gonna get more focus spells, more hexes.
Yeah.
So you're gonna.
I mean, you're still capped at 3 focus points with everybody else, but like very quickly you have. I mean, like they're different. Like some are free from familiar, some are debuffing other people, some are reactions. So there's like a good mix there.
Like I'll give you an example, like Cackle. We're talking about Cackle. It's a focus spell, so this is one thing as I was saying that. Oh man, I thought it was better than it was. It's the fact that it's a spell. It's a focus spell, which means it costs you a focus point to do this, but
it's a free action though.
True. It is a free action that you can sustain the spell. When I first read it, I thought it just gave you the ability to once a turn sustain a spell, but it's a focus point spell.
That wouldn't be a first level.
No, that's crazy.
They wouldn't just give that to you right off the bat.
The thing about we were talking about hexes, and we say hexes are for all focus point. There are hex cantrips, and they do not cost focus points.
Yes.
Aren't those just cantrips though?
But they're specific to the witch, like no one else can take them.
They're uncommon.
Yeah, they're hexes.
If you look at the traits, they have witch on them.
Oh, so you have to.
They're specific to.
Got it. Yeah, like the oracle one.
On the APG, it's on page 237. They start.
Looking at clinging eyes is a cantrip. That's a hex cantrip. And anything that affects hexes would affect that.
So not only did they create this whole new class, but they also created new specific class spells. So that you can't. So now it's not just like, it's not. Anyone can use this spell. You have to be a witch.
You have to be a witch for this. Because
It's
something that it's something that you would, and like certain like specific hexes depends on which lesson and which theme you're on. So you kind of if there's certain hexes you want to have that might help your decision in what theme. Some of these are really cool. Like I'm just looking at Malicious Shadow. You basically make the target shadow like attack them.
What?
Yeah.
Nope.
Third level hex. You reshape the target shadow into deadly forms such as strangling hands, a dangerous weapon, harrying runes, and command it to attack the target. And you can sustain it. You can literally make Peter Pan Shadow fight him.
I don't want none of this.
Told you.
Yeah, that's upsetting.
This is so much better than what.
Yeah,
they did so well on this.
They really like put in work on this.
That's why I wanted to see this first before I decided on what I'm doing for the next campaign, because it's like it could go either way. And
and here's that phase familiar. This is the focus spell that all witches get. You draw upon your patron's power to momentarily shift your familiar from its solid physical form into an ephemeral form of itself, shaped of mist. Your familiar gains resistance 5 to all damage and is immune to precision damage. So this would only apply to the triggering damage or whatever. Like obviously this is a reaction.
Yeah.
And then my familiar's about to get a hit, and then it just starts phases out of existence.
Tank familiar. I mean that is possible.
And every time you heighten, focus spells are automatically heightened to half your level. And this has a +1 heightened that every +1 is its resistance is increased by 2. So it just gets more resistant.
Yeah, so you could theoretically totally do some kind of like tank familiar where you could have this like very powerful familiar that would be eating a lot of damage.
I just want like tiny familiar to be flying around and just like consuming entire enemies.
Just eating damage.
No, eating people.
Eating people. No.
Kirby?
What? Kirby.
Yeah, make Kirby.
Oh my god,
That's
you could totally have the Kirby familiar.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Man.
Starts copying
so
powers.
amazing.
Yes.
You're like, oh, what does your familiar look like? Kirby.
Kirby.
You're like, what? You're like, yeah, it's just like a
Kirby.
round
Little-
mushroom with
little
a big
cheese.
mouth.
little-
That's up.
Yep, and just suck everyone in. Just
Oh man.
you're like, does your familiar have like asthma? No, just trust me.
He's
It's coming.
very, very
Yeah.
hungry.
He's just trust me. Just don't stay in the air when he does that though.
Oh man.
A little to the left. That's nightmare fuel though. Okay, so I guess we can say Tina from getting to play. Obviously, we haven't really gotten to play The Witch. This just recently came out within the week.
Yeah.
How do you feel between the playtest and this without obviously getting to play it? Like, how are give me your kind of like takeaways between what you saw, some of your concerns. Did they really step their game up on this class, and kind of like your overall conclusion of what's going on here?
I like this a lot better than the playtest. Just familiar stuff aside, if you didn't get the familiar, just the fact that they have expanded on the themes, that you have themes and lessons, it kind of gives you more room to play with. Before, when it was just the lessons, you were kind of constricted to like, okay, maybe as you leveled up, you got to pick different lessons and mix it up that way. You didn't have as many options to figure out, like from an RP standpoint, what kind of witch do you want to be. The fact that you have a theme and then you can also dip into other spells, it's more fun to play with. Because if you're doing like a one shot, it's very, you can be very easy just to build a character that stats wise is great. But when you're doing like a drawn out campaign, you want to have a character that you kind of want to live in and play with and kind of make into a real person. So I like that there's more room to grow here. That the idea of themes instead of lessons was something that I really found appealing, and that was kind of not in the playtest before. So
Awesome.
and like it helps you, like just giving a theme of like night and fate, that it gives you an idea of like long term, this is kind of it gives you an idea of what your patron's kind of about without specifically knowing who your patron is, as opposed to just learning lessons from someone.
Just
Someone's teaching you stuff and you don't know. So it seems to be a lot more balanced, and even just some of the feats, the way they stack, or just the variety that you have, it's just there's a lot, and I like that there's a lot of versatility in this. There's a lot of, especially playing the druid, there's a lot of similarities that I'm seeing in how you can build it. So I like that it's a little bit of the sorcerer, it's a little bit of druid, it's a little bit of alchemist, it's a little bit of everything. So if you really can't decide on what class, which kind of has a little bit of everything, so you could be all of them.
you could just do what you could kind of get your feel of everything.
You can be barbarian, you can be alchemist, you can do ranger.
So I really feel, obviously we need to spend more time, build characters with these. Tina, did you build a witch offhand?
I didn't build one yet, because I'm kind of, I may do this when we do our Agents of Edgewatch campaign, so I'm kind of,
Yeah.
I want to play around with it a little bit more.
You're still sitting on it.
If Paizo's listening, can you make a familiar that turns into what it eats, please? Can that be a feat? Can we make that a feat?
I'll say this, Tina. If someone makes the Kirby familiar in our campaign, we'll figure out that feat.
We'll make
well, I mean, if the familiar can learn spells by eating scrolls, why can't it turn into something that it eats? It makes sense. It makes sense.
You know what?
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's so legit, though.
Right.
Because I'm thinking of it.
I'm just saying.
I would say, like, if it can.
That's how you learn.
If it eats. Well, it would have to be like. Well, if the familiar eats scrolls, right?
Yep.
It retains that spell forever, right?
Yep, it's adding into your quote unquote spell book.
Spell book, right? So does it have to be on your spell list, like all scrolls, or is it something? Actually, that's a really interesting question. Now, does it have to be on your spell list?
Let's actually look at that.
I think that's
don't
something to look up.
think.
If it doesn't,
Did I
that
write that
actually makes
down?
that super powerful.
I think it has to be if it's learning a spell, it has to be a part of your tradition, whatever your theme is.
Got it.
But like you can learn some if you're taking on another lesson that can come from a different school of magic. But yeah, if you're learning something, it does need to be a part of the same theme.
There you go. Each time you gain a level, your patron teaches your familiar 2 new spells of any level you can cast, chosen from the common spells of your tradition or others you gained access to. Feats also grant familiars additional spells. Your familiar can learn spells independently of your patron. Can learn any spell on your tradition spell list by physically consuming a scroll. It takes 1 hour.
So
he really enjoys that scroll too. He doesn't just like waff it in 5 seconds. He takes an hour to eat that scroll.
Well, he has a little.
He gets to catch up.
Enjoy your
has
food.
like a little thing of wine and a little Chianti.
Some fava beans.
So it's kind of like you're the familiar because your familiar can do so much.
Yeah.
Like you like you're from the way they phrase it is that you learn your spells from your familiar. Your familiar is basically your spellcasting teacher. You're just like a regular person and your familiar is giving you all the tools. So like your familiar is everything and you're just kind of like the tool to do it all.
I feel like at that point the familiar is like, look at me. I'm the spellcaster now.
Basically. It's like the familiar is like, I know all these things. I can't actually cast though, but you can. So go do it.
I will say that I actually like looking at some of the focus spells and other hexes you get. The build variety is quite diverse.
Yeah.
Because you get things that like you were talking about Malicious Shadow, and that's just straight up combat spell. Then you have things like discerning secrets, and you're getting pluses to skill checks or perception rolls. Then you get like things like life boost, where like you temporary bolster a target's vitality, they gain fast healing equal to double the spell's level.
But you can't get them all. You can only
True.
get certain
I'm just saying that you could be like a supporting witch, or you could be like an attacking person, or you could be like more like the skills person. She can instead of just taking, it's not just the feats, it's also the spell directions you're going to and traditions.
So there's a lot more like with the druid that I'm playing now, there's a couple of focus spells, but there's not a huge variety of them. There's a lot more here, but you can't get them all because you're restricted by whatever your theme is. So they're really powerful, but you're not OP because you can't get them all. So it's still balanced that way. You're still restricted.
Yeah, and also being focus spells also restricts even though you have 6 focus spells, you really only ever cast 3 a day, maybe 4 or 5. You know, with refocusing.
Yeah, it depends how often you get those 10-minute rests, if at all. There's some days you're just pushing. You're like, nope, we don't have 10 minutes. We're gonna keep going.
We don't need this.
Nope.
So yeah, like I said, the variety of spells. I think that's a lot of the stuff on the core rulebook it's got a clear path. And it's like you get this, you just keep getting better at that thing. And this one, it's like you literally could take this one feat that gives you this increase to skill checks, and then the next time you're taking the Malicious Shadow, and you just like having people's shadows devour them.
Yeah, I could see that being something really cool.
Because then also too, like just from a story RP point of view, that you don't know, like you can play it that you gradually learn more about your patron as you go, and that can influence what lessons you learn later on and what you dip into if you go a bit more towards the dark, necromancer side, or if you become more, combat oriented. So there's a lot of ways you can play with this as a player, but then also as a DM, especially having so much control over who that patron is. There's a lot that you can do with that on both sides. So enjoy it.
Yeah, I really like not knowing who the patron is, because that can grow with the DM. Also, it can grow with your story.
You can insert it into any story that way. You're not limited.
And especially I see a lot of people on the forums and on chat groups and stuff saying, "Oh, I'm coming from 5th edition and I'm playing a warlock." What's the most similar thing? It's witch. It's gotta be
basically
witch. Like I'm not. They literally, a warlock is a male witch, so kind of fits the bill. I would love to play a witch. I think it would be cool to play I mean, like, see, here's the problem. I would play, like, I don't know. I would do it, like, not to take anything from Zach, but I would totally play, like, an ASMR witch. And then be like, oh, man, it's definitely an angel sending me good stuff. So, like, kind of be leaning into that good stuff. And then, boom, it's Asmodeus the whole time.
See, that's the thing. You can play the witch and really have no idea what your actual alignment is because you don't know who you're working for, technically.
No. Yeah, I like that.
You're just like, I get cool shit from somebody.
Yeah.
And I have an animal that teaches me stuff. Life is good.
And there could be multiple people too granting you power.
That's true.
So that's one of the things where that could almost explain why, like, oh, I have the one that gives me increases to people's healing, and then also one that I tear your shadow out of you.
That's super creepy.
Yeah, so you get multiple hands shifting your power, which I think is a cool concept.
I mean, it opens up so much more for the DM, especially if you're not doing an AP, because APs you're kind of like following like a trail, but if you're
even an AP though, that's more of like a long form. You can kind of dabble with that because you're playing a character from basically 1 to like 15,
20.
18 ish.
Yeah, 15 to 18. Yeah. They go about that high. A leashy with an insect familiar. That's right, Blaze. That would be pretty cool. Lives in your foliage. That would actually be pretty cool. As like a concept of character. I'm just a sucker for having choices. I know a lot of people complain about the choices. Me, I'm a huge sucker for, and Blaze wins with the ever. I'm sorry if you're listening to this. Blaze just said a goblin with a tapeworm familiar.
I'm thinking of Ratatouille with like the little chef and the little like mouse controlling him. That's totally the witch familiar relationship.
There you go.
Can't do shit without your familiar.
You know what's funny is you could totally make that entire character because a cook is now a background.
It is.
So you could take Cauldron and you can make your familiar a rat, but like a multicolor rat or like rat with
I love this because it's even though it's a witch and we kind of have like the stereotypical like this is a witch because we see it in like film and all this stuff. You can still play this however you want. There's so much flexibility with this class. I love it.
Oh yeah, I love the choice options. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the phasing, the familiar phasing. It becomes mist, but it's only active for that one turn. Yeah,
for that one action that you activated it for.
The fact that it's a focus reaction that does restrict how you can. So it is a little balanced that way. So otherwise you can do that.
It's about to die, and then you wink it out of existence.
Yeah. Like no, I need that, please, thank you.
Like nope, we're not waiting like a few weeks.
Nope.
No, they took that out. If your familiar dies, it comes back the next day when you do your daily preparations.
Which I think is cool. I like
it could just be a complete stranger though the next time, or like the same familiar in like a different form, or it could just be the same. Like you have 3 options. It's either the same familiar reincarnated as something else, or brand new familiar, and that is DM's discretion. That is entirely up to you.
DM's discretion.
DM's discretion.
Oh,
it's the DM / patron. The patron technically decides, so that would be the DM.
Yeah.
So.
But your familiar dying doesn't affect your spell casting.
No.
So if you've already prepped your spells, and then the first encounter, the orc comes in and hits your familiar, and it instantly kills it, you still have all the spells you prepped for that day.
Yeah. So that way you can still function as a player and still contribute. But yeah, with the playtest before, you were like afraid to bring your familiar out. Like, nope, we're just gonna stay hidden and keep my spells and just. If it was a day, maybe, or if you lost half of your spells and not like quite so many, but like a week of being hindered like that when no one else gets that kind of punishment.
You basically turn into like a level 0 commoner with some skills.
And then it's like, if you're a high level, like if you're making your way up to like level 16, 17, 18, then you're just like, I'm just gonna go on vacation for a week. Y'all come back when like you're done, and I'll join you later. Like, So I'm glad
Going
they
to Tahiti.
fixed,
I'll be back in a week.
I'm glad they fixed that because that was just a little. I understand there being repercussions for that, but that was a little much.
Yeah, I did notice that, like, in a lot of the stuff, since we did play the playtest from kind of the beginning to even into the witch and stuff and going further, Steve the Magus is coming. I will run something special for you for that one. And Summoner.
No, I will get my character killed in Agents and Edgewatch, and I'll make it.
There you go. Is Summoner for Trevor. If you're listening, Trevor, Summoner is coming. But they did kind of teeter on this whole like crazy detriment system and then not too detriment. And I feel like they found like a nice balance because a lot of stuff was like, oh, if you have like if your familiar dies, oh, that's it, no more spells forever. And now they didn't give every spell back.
You had
right?
3 cantrips and 1 spell per level. That's not enough. And you get stuck with the spells that you had prepared when your familiar like died. So like for a week you get stuck with the same. No, it was too much.
Yeah.
And I like that. Like, yeah, it has to do with like your next daily prep. Also, I feel
But
like
also be playable.
Yeah.
Yes.
It makes it very playable. And I feel like also it should be dangerous, especially for the witch. Or any class with a familiar. I mean, wizard's a little different, alchemist is a little different, but like the ranger and a druid, obviously. So druid, ranger, witch are kind of like the ones that like if they lost their familiar, I feel like they should have like a huge character. Obviously, if you're like, you should have like a character like freak out.
Yeah.
Because this is like A, something super important to your character, but B, you don't know if it's coming back as like the cute Kirby creature. Now it might just come back as
you could have a familiar come back that's just a huge dick and have to deal with that.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
No one wants that. No one wants that.
I mean, you could still be penalized. It's just a different way, and it's still because the way they worded it with the playtest was that like your patron is taking it out on you that you didn't protect your familiar, and that's why you got the huge penalty. And it's like, then wouldn't you question why you're following your patron if they're that cruel to like?
Yeah.
They're just. I don't know. I like looking at things from a story perspective, and I was just like, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
Like, why am I following you if you're going to be that much of an asshole?
Yeah, really.
I can see, like, if your familiar, like, dies frequently, like, it's stacking, and eventually it getting to that point where you get that spell detriment, that would make sense. But, like, the first time it happens? No. Yeah, like your familiar dies every week, I could see that being like a, you know what? No, now there's consequences. But if you're generally like you take good care of your pets, you should be okay.
I wonder if playing a witch would lead you into like a weird, like maybe you don't want to find out who your patron is.
Well, I kind of thought, yeah.
Like
there's an interesting ancestry witch combo that I texted you about. If you did, which I don't know if I would go with this. It might be a bit much, but if you did a changeling witch, because as a changeling, you're constantly getting called to go back to your hag mom. But then if you also have this other patron and they're like competing for you,
competing for your love,
that could be a weird. Like you go to your patron to like try and like disconnect from your hag.
Yeah.
Like that could be a fun like pull.
Oh, you got 2 Christmases? Oh.
Right.
2 birthday gifts? Oh.
You get all the things.
You get all the things. I could see that.
I think there's some stuff that you get though as like being part hag, like the nails. So some of it overlaps a little bit. So it's some of it gets a little redundant in that mix. But yeah, there's a lot of different. I kind of wonder if you could do a witch cleric.
That's what I was actually thinking about. Like, at a certain point, what happens if you don't find out about your patron? So you're like, well, I've always been called to like be devout, and I was very devout to my patron. And all of a sudden, like this god shows up, right? Because gods do that, right? Gods, like especially the Greek gods, they kind of they're jerks. So like this god shows up and is like, no, I'm totally your patron. And you're not going to disbelieve the god, right? Like I roll a disbelieve god. You're like, yeah.
It's like the current CR.
Yeah. Like, nah, you can't really disbelieve God, but
Yeah.
And now you're this cleric of this one deity, and it's completely different than your patron. Your patron was like something else, and your patron's like, whenever
so you have these two like entities fighting over your soul.
Yeah, I think
awesome.
that would actually make for a really cool and interesting campaign. Because like as a DM, I like coming from the DM perspective, I could text you, Tina, and be like, "Hey, listen, these spells aren't on your spell list anymore, or your patron your familiar doesn't have it." And you're like, "What do you mean?" Be like, "Well, no, like you don't have it because your patron's upset with what you're doing." And then
you're
so you're like,
too far.
Yeah, and then like, oh, okay, now I'm gonna, try and work on my patron, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, I make these preparations, and nope, your god says no, you don't get those spells.
Magic 8-ball, try again.
Yeah. Or like, oh, you get fine, your god's not being a dick, but like your god's like, hey, listen, you can only, prep guidance, heal.
Your hexes don't work.
Yeah, hexes don't work. I think that would be like an interesting.
I was about to say an interesting, like an ASMR witch with like the fervor, the fervor theme.
So you
but
get
you're like a cleric
spells?
of like Rovagug.
Yeah,
just like all over the place.
Yeah, so you can layer that real well with a whole bunch of stuff.
Interesting.
Duskwalker, because technically they're reincarnated souls, but they don't remember who they were. So you come back and you already have this like familiar.
Yep.
And you don't know.
That'd be cool.
That's the easiest character to make. You don't need a backstory. You're like, I legit have no idea where I came from.
Yeah, they're like, no, I just showed up.
Make it up for me. DM's gonna make my character for me.
Oh no! I retract everything.
That's basically what you're saying. It's if I don't know my backstory, then you gotta tell me. Easy character creation. I don't know a thing. DM, go. Who am I?
I mean, it's cool. I would turn you into like a war god. I'd be like, well, your character now, Tina, is like evil Xena.
Ooh.
Like you don't remember being like an evil Xena, but like people like see you. Like you walk through town and all of a sudden people are like, oh shit. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's fun.
All right. So why don't we do some closing statements?
Sure.
We'll start with Steve, closing statements, and then we'll finish heavy on Tina because you actually played it. So I'm assuming you'll have a lot to speak on in your closing statements. So Steve, what do you?
Like I said, we kind of touched on this before with that. This lets you go. The witch design lets you go into so many different directions. You're taking your theme, which kind of guides your initial decisions. You can take a whole bunch of familiar feats and make your familiar badass. You could take a bunch of new spells that you can take in that are different than the ones that your theme says, or you could take these lessons that not only make you more powerful, but make your familiar get more abilities. And I think it's just a really interesting design, and it's, I would say, much different from the designs of the classes in the core rulebook, because a lot of the designs of the core rulebook are you start at something and you build on that. Yes. This also has that where, obviously the familiar line is a lot of that, but there's also, I would say, of something viable just to take a little bit of everything. And you take a little bit of lessons, you take a little bit of familiar stuff, you take a little bit of extra hexes and focus spells, and then it's still going to be pretty awesome to play.
Awesome. Tina, why don't you finish us out with your infinite knowledge?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if I was just going off of the playlist, I don't know if I would want to do a witch in like a long-term campaign, but definitely with the updates that they've made, they've really rounded it out and added so much more depth to it. It's not a caricature of a class. It's a whole like class that you can explore. And especially the fact that it's an int-based spellcaster, and the way they have it, it's through a familiar. You're not stopping to study books. You're not, it's not situational. Like I have to go to town and find a book. I have to go get supplies for spell scrolls, or you have to be like in nature, or it's kind of like your familiar is kind of like your laptop. You can just kind of like go around and like wherever you are, you can build on what spells you have or your craft, or if you've got the cauldron, you can make potions wherever you are and build on that. So you have that versatility of wherever you are, wherever your party is traveling, you can justify why you have this hex now and why you have this potion now. And I just like that whole relationship with the familiar, and that's kind of like how you function, that it's more of like a living, breathing thing rather than, you can still be that smart, intelligent creature, but not be like the bookworm. It's more life experience based intelligence rather than just wisdom. So it's a nice kind of combination of like bits and pieces of different spell casting abilities that I like, and they're all just kind of combined into the same class.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing one of our players play a witch. I don't know who. But I actually look forward to seeing this. I look forward to, if I ever get a chance, to actually playing a witch. I have a few ideas.
Halloween one shot.
Halloween one shot. I'll definitely play a witch.
We'll all be witches.
I'm all for that one. That'd be really fun.
Witches and goblins and orcs.
Witches, goblins, and orcs. It's just, we're actually running a tavern and trying to convince people to stay there. And the whole time, people are like, no, they're going to eat us. We're like, no, we're just running a tavern. Yeah.
And maybe some pirates just for good measure. Well, some swashbucklers in there.
You need pirates.
Just
Always
because.
need pirates. Just because.
Oh, man. That might be our Halloween one shot.
Tina's really good with those Halloween one-shots.
No, I did the Black Friday one.
I apologize. Steve was the Halloween one-shot.
Steve did the Halloween one.
So Steve's really good with that. So Steve, get on that. Start building Halloween one-shot. Actually, I was just thinking, because we've always talked about this. Maybe we'll do it this year, about doing the Pathfinder Avengers. And
we've been talking about that for.
You literally have Scarlet Witch.
Yes. Oh my gosh. See, this is the only thing that I kind of wish, and none of the classes really have that. It's like you can cast fly, but just the ability to like hover, not necessarily fly, but you can just kind of like hover in the air a little bit to just, help you be a little more stealthy and just be cool for flavor.
I believe Oracle has that.
You can just float.
Yeah, Cosmos. Their mystery of the cosmos.
Because witches should be able to fly. I mean, I think if anything's missing from this, I think that's really. That'd be nice if that was.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm sad they don't have a flying broom.
That's really. I mean, that's really the only thing that's missing from this. Is I either need a broom or I need like a flying feet, not a spell, a feet.
Yeah, or a focus spell, right? Like you can like
something. Yeah.
So like you could animate a broom to fly for you for like.
You gotta.
10 minutes or something.
It kind of contradicts what I said before about it not falling into specific tropes, but like also
some of them are fun. Some of them are fun. Yeah, I would totally like to see that. Like you could cast like a spell on a broom to fly on or something. That would be fun.
Or just go hocus pocus and just on any inanimate object.
That'd be cool.
Vacuum,
cool.
whatever.
Animate object or something.
And just fly on whatever happens to be nearby. Yeah.
It's cool. Speaking of Agent of Edgewatch, if you tune in next Saturday, August 15th, we'll probably be doing an early session 0 on that for our 1-year anniversary.
1 year.
I'm just going to tell me what they're planned so I can build accordingly.
No one knows what they're doing.
No one knows what they're doing. Just
we do everything at the last minute.
All I do is I beg for my players to choose a background from the player's guide of Agents of Edgewatch. But
that's why I kind of like that the witch came out when it did for this, that because you do have another intelligence-based spellcaster, that especially I've been talking about, my forensic scientist character, like this is kind of, a fun way to maybe investigate and do some fun things with the new AP that's coming out. So I think just the timing of this is actually working out pretty well.
Oh yeah,
it's also fun because you have the Salem witch trials. All of our international listeners, you have the witches were on the wrong side of law enforcement, and to have a witch on the side of law enforcement, I just find super appealing. So I'm about.
I can just imagine You having whatever your familiar looks like, and sitting there petting it in like the guard barracks, and everyone's like freaking out. It's like I don't even want to be anywhere near that thing.
Especially if it's Kirby and just eats
just
people.
eating tables.
Yeah,
like whole tables.
Well, I guess with that, knowing that Tina's going to be soon a quadrillionaire, from all of us here at Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gamed, we are rolling dice, giving advice with a little bit of that New York spice. Good night and goodbye.
And follow us on social media at NVNG Podcast.
No, we don't need that, Tina. They know what it is.
Yep. Bye.
I thought you said you had work in the morning. Try to make this faster.
Oh man. Good night, everybody.
Good night.